Hello and welcome to Psychic Talk. I'm your host, Priscilla Gendron, and welcome to part two of our amazing conversation and journey with the amazing Andy van Wyk. Hi, Andy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Priscilla. Good to be back here with you.
Yes, and we were unfortunately cut short in our conversation because of our load shedding and the journeys and trials of living in Africa, especially South Africa. So it's good to know we were just discussing that we're both okay with our electricity today. So taking a little bit of a backtrack in our conversation because we were cut off midsection of our conversation. So we're kind of just having to sort of just go back and give an overview of what we discussed in our previous conversation with you. We delved into the journey you've taken over the last 22 plus years and the transformational stuff that's happened to you that's allowed you to then become the kind of person that you are today, and stepping into your transformational coaching and your helping of other people as well. So maybe just going back, it's like when we are looking at the transformational coaching and the journey that you're taking for the moment, you were briefly touching on the fact that you went to see a counselor who asked you some very delicate or awkward questions, shall we say. Would you like to sort of expand on that?
Well, I think for most people, yes, it would be an awkward question because
Yes.
I think she was astounded by my answer. And her question was simply this. She said, Andy, this is our last session, and I have to ask you before we finish, why did you want the HIV? And I replied to her,
and that's a bomb that gets like dropped in our laps. You know, why did we want that? What was your answer?
Yes. My answer was simply this, because I thought it would keep the person that I was with in my life.
Wow.
And she looked at me and said, well, you know yourself. And that's one of the greatest things. You know, Neville Goddard wrote, man's chief delusion is that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. We want to blame everybody and everything else instead of taking responsibility, because it's only when we take responsibility that we can have the transformation we're looking for. And it's not a one-shot deal. It's a lifetime commitment to it. It's something you work at constantly.
It is. It's quite a profound sort of statement. And in terms of your answer, for me, it hits home because I can understand that. I can fully grasp and understand how we, I don't know, maybe is it get manipulated into believing certain things or going down a certain kind of philosophy of how we are programmed in the world?
Absolutely. Our conditioning, you know, it comes from various, you know, our parents, our teachers, the people we mixed with in those formative years. And past a certain point, we don't even question that conditioning. We're on autopilot. And we just live and react from that base. But nothing we believe is ultimately true. But this is good news because we can change those things that are no longer serving us. And this is where the transformation happens. When you start questioning all those things that you thought were as solid as concrete, but actually aren't.
Exactly.
The prison we're living in is of our own making. It's in the mind. And it doesn't really matter past a certain point where you got these ideas from. They're yours now. But we are our solution. We are the ones that can change them for ourselves if we choose to. And I think, unfortunately, we live in a society that believes in instant gratification. So if it doesn't happen in one book or one session or one lecture, then it doesn't work. You know,
Exactly.
I was speaking somewhere once and a lady retorted, she said, sometimes it's not, people think if it doesn't happen in one tweet, this stuff doesn't work. But it's a process. There's layers upon layers that we need to remove because we want to change it at the core and return to the state of who we truly are. What we're doing is letting go of the smaller self with a small s so we can have our authentic self with a capital S. Even in the Bible, it says, Christ said, you have to die to be reborn. And the death is of the self, this persona we have created that isn't authentically us.
And that's very true. And just actually this morning, I was watching a clip of something, and this woman was being interviewed, and she was saying those exact sort of sentiment about that instant gratification. And it's like it has to be instantaneous. And if it's not instantaneous, then you cancelled in a sense. And patience and perseverance are out the door. So nobody takes time to find themselves or to find the journey they're supposed to be on. It's like all or nothing.
Absolutely. And if it does, as we already said, if it doesn't happen in literally a heartbeat, they don't even go any further.
Yes.
And I've been on this
Structural
journey
seekers.
going on 24 years now, and I will never change and never stop.
Yeah, I believe so, because I think we start to learn as people, and we will continue to learn until the time we take our last breath. So it's not this, okay, oh, at the beginning of my journey, boom, I've got it, click, I've got it now, I can just sit back and enjoy my life. No, it's this constant journey.
Absolutely.
And
it's not so much a learning, but an unlearning of all that isn't right and isn't true. We've been taught to live from the outside in and from the bottom to the top instead of the other way around. We've got to learn to live from the inside out and from the higher to the lower, because you're not a body. You are spirit having an earthly experience and have taken human form for that. The body is just a suit of clothing for this earthly journey. This is Earth School for souls, because it offers the greatest opportunity for growth.
That's quite an interesting sort of take on it. There was a conversation I was listening to, and a guy was talking, and he was saying that he would go to dinner at his family's home, and his mom would get a roast lamb and cut the end off the top of the roast lamb and put it in the oven. And he asked his mom, why do you do that? He says, no, because my mom did it. So they said, let's phone grandma. So they phoned the mother and asked the mother, why do you cut the top end of the roast? Well, I don't know. It's because my mother did it. So they phoned the great-grandmother and asked her the same question. Why do you cut the top end of the roast off? He says, because in those days, they had small ovens and the roast would not fit. So they would cut the top.
And no one questioned it.
That's just like, so you've taken it for 3 generations.
Yes, and we have generational conditioning to remove from ourselves as well.
Exactly.
That's just been passed down. Why do we do this? Because that's the way it's done. Said who?
Yes.
And no one can ever tell you who that person was that.
Exactly. Or it's my mom and dad taught me, or that's how my parents did it. And then you speak to them and they say, well, that's how my parents did it. So it's that generational thing that comes down from generation to generation. And it's like we're in a place now in our lives and in the whole world and the universe of things coming to a head. So change is inevitable. We either get with the program or we don't.
Absolutely, because this is the age of Aquarius. And Aquarius is the birth of new things. And if you're not working on it and you're not growing and shifting and changing, you're going to be left behind. You've got to be part of the process. You know,
and that's a difficult thing for people to do.
It is very difficult. You know, most people don't want to acknowledge, or they might acknowledge it, but that's just what it is, and they don't want to even touch it. They don't want to deal with it because, yes, they know on some level that it's going to have to involve revealing things they don't want to look at, revealing truths they don't want to see, because most people don't want to take responsibility. They're still playing the blame game. It's not you, it's not them, it's you've got to take responsibility for all of it. But what people don't understand is the universe operates by law, whether you call it universal law or God's laws. For me, it's God's laws, and it's all the same. The law of cause and effect is this: whatever you put out is coming back. It will always return to source. So you cannot put out a negative and expect to get a positive back. You cannot pretend, you know, be discerning, and in some places you'll do it, and in others will, no, they just don't deserve it. Because there is no world outside of you. It's all inside of you, and then projected outward.
Exactly, because like attracts like.
Absolutely. And we
whatever
live out
you
of
put
what
out to
we
the
believe.
universe.
But this is coming back. So you want to be continually putting out good if you want a good life. So giving is equal to receiving, because there's ultimately only one of us here anyway.
Yes. So in terms of the conversation we're having about this, and so what sort of things do we have to sort of look out for in terms of our journey and the journey we're taking? What are sort of the like little roadblocks that you feel a lot of people in general come in contact with, in a sense?
Priscilla, I don't think you have to go looking for them. The minute something causes a disturbance within you, because what has happened through our lives is we store all these things inside, our personal likes and dislikes, which makes up our persona, the false you, as it were. And what people try to do is manipulate the outer world that it won't disturb the inner world. And you have to reach the point where you want to say, no matter what it takes, I want the removal of all this, because this is what's blocking you from achieving the life you dream of, your personal likes and dislikes. Because unconditional love is the highest vibration. Unconditional love is abundance. Unconditional love is beautiful relationships. Because if all were love, we wouldn't need things like politicians and policemen and all these other things. And love is that highest vibration. And we're not talking about the uchi-kuchi love between partners. We're talking about God's love, because God is love. And love can neither be given nor received. We swim in an ocean of love. We're just not aware of it, lost that awareness. And that's what we're seeking to regain. So if you're always blaming somebody else for your situations, you can never change anything, because you make yourself a victim. It's not them. It's not me. It's them. It's her. It's him. It's whoever. And you can't change anything. And the problem with blaming somebody else is it's a double whammy, because your world is a reflection of you to start with. So you send it out a second time, projecting it onto somebody else, because that's the ego's ploy. That it's not you, it's somebody else. but
Yes.
it comes back at you a second time, and you feel 10 times worse, and you don't even know why. And A Course in Miracles says this: there's only two forms of thinking. One is based on love, the other is based on fear. So with every thought you think, with every word you speak, it's either love or it's fear. And if you are thinking and speaking with fear, you are not thinking at all. You are hallucinating, because fear is not real.
But haven't you found recently that there has been a huge insurgence globally of fear being pushed into our lives in every shape, form, and corner?
Look what happened with COVID.
Yes.
You know, the World Health Organization called it a pandemic, and the world went and held its breath and went into fear.
Yes.
And that's what spread the COVID, the fear around it, not COVID itself.
Exactly. And I feel like there's so much of it still out there that from that, it's kind of like when somebody is beaten and then they recover from that, but they've not really recovered. And then little incidences in life will set them off and take them right back to that moment. And I think that's where we are at the moment, is we're trying to come out of it, but we keep on getting drawn back in because they keep on flashing things. It's coming again, and you're going to get this, you're going to, so it keeps on, they keep on reiterating the fear to keep us in that state of fear.
Absolutely, because that's what news does. It's high impulse, and they never put anything good out there. So it draws your attention, and you entertain that. But the good news is your conscious mind has the power to accept or reject any idea. But once you internalize it and you get emotionally involved in it, which means you put it in your subconscious, that's the emotional mind, you make it true for you. That's how people get involved in the news and take it as verbatim, that it's truth.
Yes. And in the world we're living in today, where everything is so recorded, everybody's got cell phones, and the moment something happens, the cell phones are out and everything is recorded. Yes. But it's somebody's viewpoint or opinion of when it was started, the recording, or what is shown in the recording. So it's sometimes not the accuracy of it, but the fear of it.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And what the world is doing, the masses in general, is instead of working in harmony with the laws of the universe, they use them against themselves unbeknowingly. But they are immutable. You don't have to believe in the laws, God's laws, or the laws of the universe, but they're like gravity. There's no off switch. They're at work whether you believe in them or not. As sure as God made little apples, if you jumped out of a window, you're going to hit the ground at some point. You're going down. And these laws are at work constantly. But most people unconsciously are using them against themselves. Instead of turning that around, reason gives us the ability to choose what to think. So we can choose our thinking instead of allowing the outer world to dictate the inner world.
Exactly. Because only we think our thoughts and only we feel our feelings. Nobody thinks and feels them for us but ourselves. But we get such a barrage of influence from the outside world to believe in this sort of way, and to believe in this one religion, or to believe in that religion is against this religion, or this belief system is against that belief system, or this is red and this is blue, and you have to believe in that. It's people brainwashing us into following a certain dogma.
Absolutely. And the minute you get emotionally involved in it, it's the feeling that causes the attraction. Because, you know, we hear a lot of talk about the law of attraction. But the law of attraction itself is a secondary law. The law of vibration is the primary law. Everything vibrates, nothing rests, because everything is energy.
Yes.
So your energy dictates what you attract. So if you're in that frame of mind where you're thinking about all the terrible things of the world, and this is so bad, and that is so terrible, you will keep attracting more of that into your life, because that's where your energy is. So when you start clearing up the mess inside and releasing those stored patterns, your spirit, your energy, your Shakti, as it's said in yoga terms, can start to actually flow more effectively and more efficiently. She's very powerful and she wants to help you, but there's so many blockages inside of our personal likes and dislikes, she can't make her way through. And sometimes, yes, there are certain externals that can happen, and she can pierce through and find a way. And for a moment, you will have wonderful things going on in your life. But the problem with that is it has now become conditional. The minute the outer circumstances change, it changes the internal circumstances, and you return to that state that was before. And then you don't know how to correct it. And the only way to correct it is to keep removing everything that's holding you down. And it's all your blockages, all your personal likes and dislikes. And when you do that, as Michael Singer says, you will naturally begin to rise. You must. Because your spirit, your Shakti, will be able to flow.
That's the most important thing, is allowing everything to flow freely through us.
Yes.
What sort of advice or little nuggets could you impart to our listeners on how to step into who we are as human beings?
I think the first step, Priscilla, is always, I want to take responsibility. You want a different kind of life and better results than the ones you're currently achieving. Because when you stop trying to fix the outer world, because you can't, you're not in charge here. Life happens.
Yes.
There's nothing you can do to control it. And it's all happening for you and not to you. So when you take responsibility, you know you've got to do the work on the inside and not the outside. And when you've done enough of that, the outer will start to match the inner. But it's a process. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
And the onion has got many, many layers.
Absolutely. Because you want to ultimately return to the state of who you truly are. And at the core, you're pure love. You've just lost your awareness of this. And as your awareness grows, as you return to that state, your whole world starts to shift and change. It must, because the outer reflects the inner, not the other way around. And life will bring us huge challenges. And these huge challenges are, in short, we need to use everything we go through to bring us closer to God, because that is the purpose of our journey. You know, Marianne Williamson's first book that she ever wrote was A Return to Love. This is what our journey is all about. Our return to love, that state of who we truly are.
I like that. Return to love, because it is. I mean, we're born and created in love.
Yes.
And that's what we aspire to return to.
Yes. But we've learned, the world has taught us to focus outside of ourselves instead of inside of ourselves. I think I shared in that bio of mine that I sent you about my hospital experience in 2020 in the middle of COVID.
Yes.
Let me share some of that with you, because there are a lot of gems in it that I've personally learned
Yes.
from, and I share with people whenever I have the opportunity to do so. In the worldly terms, one of my meds suppressed my bone marrow. And they couldn't identify specifically which one, but obviously it was something I needed to go through because it happened. And a healthy bone marrow is essential to the functioning of the human body.
It is.
And I woke up on Thursday, the 13th of August in 2020, in the middle of COVID, and I had the most chronic sore throat. I hadn't had a sore throat in years, not since I'd had my tonsils out. And
Yes.
I thought, there's something not right here. So I went to see my GP. She checked my vitals and all the usual sort of stuff, and then she took one look in my mouth, and it was as though she had looked in Pandora's box and really didn't know what to do with this. And she wrote me a script for the course of antibiotics, the strongest antibiotics she could, prescribe, and said, go home to bed and take these. If they don't work, I'll be able to prescribe you something else. But if those don't work, you would probably have to go to hospital. I went home. I was meeting my brother for a coffee. He went and got my meds for me. And I went home to bed. And it progressively got worse. I think that was a Thursday. By the Saturday, I'd stopped eating completely. My mouth was in the most excruciating pain. My mother and brother were both checking on me, and couldn't get me to eat. My mother would bring me yogurt or cook me scrambled eggs, but it was nothing. I could eat nothing. On the Monday, I phoned my doctor again, and she said, I'll prescribe you something for 48 hours. If these don't work, you have to go to hospital. On the Tuesday, my sister, who lives in London, had tried calling me, and I hadn't answered her call. So she phoned my mother to see if she had seen me that day yet, and she hadn't. So she phoned our brother and said, I think you need to check on our brother. I can't get hold of him. My brother phoned me, and I did take his call. He said, I'm coming to see you. I'll be there shortly. When he got to my complex, I pressed, allowed him to enter the complex, and I got up and went and opened the security gate and unlocked the front door. On my way back to my bedroom, my body went into shutdown. Now, just in this short part of what had happened up to this point, what is the takeaway from it? God's timing is always perfect. Because if anything had been just seconds out, I would have died in that apartment. Everything unfolded perfectly according to his plan. My brother arrived in my apartment, took one look at me and said, we need to get you to hospital. And he phoned my doctor. He said, can you get yourself dressed? And he threw a bag together for me, and we headed for the Santon Clinic, where my physician is. Obviously, being the time of COVID, when all I remember of that sort of initial arrival at the clinic was them bringing out the gurney to the car to put me on and take me into emergency. And I was in this little tent where a doctor appeared. I think she said to me, when last did you have a tetanus shot? And I said, not in years. And I think I got one. By then, my mother had arrived at the clinic as well, and she was standing next to me. There wasn't, well, there's not too much I remember beyond that, except the doctor said, you're going into ICU now. You can't take all that with you. So my brother had to come in and take the bag and sort out what could be taken and not taken. And then she said, you can say goodbye to one person and then we're taking you in. So I said goodbye to my mother.
Mm.
I don't know the exact time frame, but I think it's approximately 5 days later, I woke up in ICU.
Wow.
I know I'd been on a ventilator because of the bill, which showed I'd been on one for 4 days, but I don't have the experience of it.
Yes.
The level of pain in my mouth, if I say excruciating, that doesn't even begin to describe it. And apparently, these ulcers in my throat and my mouth, that actually is the first sign of a suppressed bone marrow.
Yes.
If they needed to take blood from me, they put a needle in me. It was like hellfire and brimstone. I was in ICU for approximately just under 5 weeks.
It's a long time.
Before I ended up going to a normal ward. In worldly terms, I shouldn't be here today. But what I've learned is simply this. When we're faced with a lot, because I faced my own mortality in those moments, we stay present totally in the moment. We often hear people, all the good people talking, the lecturers talking about consciousness and being in the present moment, in the now. And this is why it's so critically powerful, because I was totally in the moment. I never once went into the thought of, woe is me, this is so terrible, this is my 4th time in this clinic in the space of a year. What is going to happen? Am I going to make it? I had none of those thoughts. I was just totally in the moment with what was happening in each moment, the pain, the needles, the doctors, the nurses, the medications. I never had any negative thoughts about this. My physician was concerned for me and got me a psychiatrist to come and see me to talk to, and I didn't want to talk to her. So she got a psychologist to come, and I didn't want to talk to her either. I even had to learn to walk again when I finally got out of ICU. But at the level of worldly fact, I shouldn't be here today, but yet I am.
Yes.
We have such incredible power within us. And I don't have anything everybody doesn't have. Everybody can achieve what I went through there. I think the challenge is that most people don't realize the power they have within them. It's a power that's in them, yet not of them, because we were created as a loving thought in the mind of God. This goes back to the law of cause and effect. We were created as a loving thought in the mind of God, and a thought cannot leave its source. So we are one with the Father. I mean, even at the end of it, my physician, when she was discharging me, said, and she usually calls me Andy or Andrew these days, she said, Mr. van Wyk, she said, you are an inspiration. Life rides over you and you get up and fight. I don't really understand what she means by that. What I understand is that I didn't succumb to the drama of the situation. Because when you're totally present in the moment, the mind doesn't have time to create a story about anything. You're totally present just with what is in each moment. And that is what brought me through it. I didn't have any stories about it's so terrible, it's so bad, am I going to make it? This is I mean, they even being the time of COVID, they made special arrangements for both my mother and brother to visit me separately in ICU. But we underestimate the power that is in us. We see ourselves as bodies, and as bodies we're limited and small, but we're not bodies. We're spirit. Spirit is who we truly are. We're not these bodies. And that's what keeps us. I had to learn to walk again. When I finally got to a normal ward, my physician on that first time she visited me in the normal ward said to me, she said, Andy, you have to be able to walk yourself out of this clinic or I will put you in a step-down facility. And my first thought was, over my dead body, will I not walk out this clinic? And I said to her, can I get Max? Max was one of the physiotherapists that I'd seen in ICU. She said, I can ask, but I can't tell them because he doesn't work for me. The first day I didn't get Max. After that, I did. And I worked hard. I mean, even after the first day Max came and we had been walking around the clinic, we got back to the ward and the walker was still sitting there that I'd had in ICU for when we were walking in ICU. And I said to Max, that thing you can take back to ICU with you. He looked at me and said, you don't need it. I said, I don't want it. I don't need it. I will walk out of this clinic. And he worked hard with me. I mean, I was exhausted each day. I think Max spent at least an hour with me each day. And in the end, I was able to walk myself out of the Santon Clinic.
Incredible. It just shows you the resilience of spirit and just the power that we have within us, as you say. The power within us is incredible.
You know what it is also, Priscilla? The power of just making a clear decision and committing ourselves to it. I was determined to walk. I made a clear choice for myself. I will walk myself out of this clinic. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. No what ifs. You know, even in those early, obviously when I was in ICU, I would get bed bath because I couldn't bath myself. I couldn't wash myself. When I got into a normal ward, one of the sisters came to me and said, do you want us to take you for do you want us to come in? I said, no, I'm going in there. And I pointed to the bathroom. It was a shower over a bath. I was obviously quite weak by that time. I'd lost, I think, close to 15 kilos because I hadn't eaten for five weeks because of my mouth. And I would sit on the edge of the bath and then lower myself into the bath and sit in the bath and shower. But I was going to shower. And I would pull myself up and out and I would hold onto the basin and shave. We have that will, that determination within each of us to be able to do these things. But we don't, and I think this goes back to Marianne Williamson's quote from that beautiful book of hers, where she says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We're too afraid to acknowledge the light that is within us. And this is where the power lies. This is how powerful and incredible we all are. And if we use this power for good, this is how we will heal and transform the world.
Exactly.
Each of us doing and playing our part in that process.
If each one of us, in turn, shone our light as brightly as we can, we could illuminate the world in light.
Absolutely. And the world has enough resources to clothe and feed and shelter everybody in excess.
Exactly.
But we've been taught lack and limitation. These are not things of God. Those are concepts of the world.
And it comes back again to love and fear. So they would rather
Yes.
us live in fear because there's more control than to live in love where there's no control.
Absolutely. And love and fear are both things you cannot see, but people are more suspect of love and have more faith in fear.
Exactly. Which should be the other way around.
Absolutely. Where are you putting your faith? If you want a different kind of life, you can have it. But where are you putting your faith? And are you willing to do what it takes to have it? Because Christ said the kingdom is within. It lies within. It's not out there in the world.
Exactly.
Because the whole world in essence is a figment of your imagination, because we live out of what we believe. But people want to give up too early. When I teach this to my students, I say to them, when you were learning to walk, after the 10th time, did you look up at your mother and say, Mama, I don't think this is for me. I'm out of here. No, you kept going until you got it right. Why don't we do this with the rest?
It's so important.
On a worldly level, my kidneys are still chronically low. My physician can't explain why they function as well as they do. I don't need OT. I've already had 3 more years, because last Monday was 3 years since I was checked out of the Santon Clinic. And I don't need dialysis, and I've told her I will never go on dialysis.
But it's true. I mean, when I look at the whole COVID story, at one stage, my son was diagnosed. All my neighbors in the complex that I lived in, everybody got it. And I was the only one that didn't. And the woman said to me, oh, can we do some tests just to see why you haven't contracted it, because you've had so many people around you, and you've been clients that have had it, and you've been in close contact with people.
Yes.
So I said, fine, you can take my blood and test it. I said, because I'll tell you why. Because I told the universe I wasn't going to have it.
Because you
and
didn't
I put in my mind that I won't have it, and it's not going to come anywhere near me or affect me and my already compromised immune system. I refused. Yes. I said to the universe, I'm not having it. So I put in that positivity towards not having it, and I never did to today. So
belief is so, what you believe is so powerful.
Exactly.
So if you look at your circumstances and you don't like the results you're currently getting, question what you're believing, because you can change it. But to change that past conditioning takes study and repetition of that study, because just like learning to walk, just like learning your name, it took repetition.
Yes.
To unlearn it takes repetition also.
Exactly.
And when you want to release something, when you want to allow the Shakti to do its work to assist you releasing those blockages within, if it was stored with pain, it is going to be released with pain. And people shy away from it. The minute it causes a disturbance inside, I don't want this. And they shove more down on top of it. And so they keep blocking your spirit further.
And I feel like so many people in this world just won't accept that. And they just fall into being sheep, in a sense.
You know what? Absolutely. But it's a simple analogy. Why does a baby who gets beaten by its mother still cling to that mother, because that's what it knows.
Exactly.
They could have this bigger, beautiful life if they choose it. But no, it's just too scary to go there, because it involves, yes, it involves work. And I always say, and anybody who thinks that a spiritual journey is an easy path has never walked one. Because you will have challenges in order to release everything that is not authentically you. It will come up so that you can release it. And if you don't, the chains get thicker, not easier. Time heals nothing. People like to say, oh, time will heal this. Time heals nothing. You've got to do the work.
Exactly. And it is saying, oh, it'll take time, and even things in terms of loss or trauma that you've had.
Time heals nothing. Do the work.
You have to do the work in order to let go and process it. And yes, it can take you time to do that, but the time is not healing. The process work is healing.
Yes. And linear time as we know it anyway is not real in God's world.
Yes.
The only, in God's world, which is infinity, the only moment is the present moment, is the now. That's why it's so powerful.
Yes.
And that's why Eckhart Tolle always speaks about the power of now. Because when you can be totally focused and immersed in what you're present with in this moment, with not another thought about anything else, you can't create stories of what may or may not happen. First of all, the past is gone. The only proof you have of it is a thought. And the future hasn't even arrived yet. But if you keep entertaining the past, you'll create a future that looks just like the past.
Yeah,
yes, it might have different props and figures, but essentially it will be the same story over and over and over.
Exactly. Andy, I would love to continue our conversation again. We can chat and chat. And once we get going on the subject, it's just morphs and turns into more and more and more to discuss. So I would like to thank you very much for joining us today. It's just been such a revelation, and I hope that because I definitely have had some aha moments in your conversations that, oh, okay, why am I doing this, and things like that. So it is definitely food for thought, and we might revisit that again. So to chat to Andy or to have a session with him, please feel free to email him at Greg, GREIG.co.za. So please feel free. All the information will be in the link in the description below of our video on YouTube when this will go live in a couple of days. So I wanted to just say thank you very much, Andy, for joining us. And thank you for sharing your wealth and plethora of knowledge and information.
Thank you, Priscilla. It's been great being here.
And thank you, everybody, and chat to you soon again. Thank you. Bye-bye.